The Japanese have given us some of the most iconic characters and narratives in entertainment history, but they've also created some really weird stuff. None as weird as these adaptations of popular Western media. Trust us, things are going to get unusual this time. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell to stay up to date with all things Screen Rant.
I won't. I simply refuse to be part of your scheme.
Sherlock Hound. While we may be used to Benedict Cumberbatch or Robert Downey Jr.'s interpretations of the greatest detective ever, there's a bizarre rendition of the classic character in Japan. But one of the directors of Sherlock Hound, an anime-inspired version of Holmes and Watson, is none other than Hayao Miyazaki. Along with his team and creators, they turned the legendary duo into anthropomorphic dogs in a steampunk rendition of Victorian London. Who would have come up with that? Miyazaki only did a few episodes, but they were good enough that they were stitched together to make one standalone feature film in the 80s. Batman, Gotham Knight. In theory, Batman Gotham Knight makes a lot of practical sense. It's a set of 6 anime shorts, each tackling a different issue for Batman in the months before Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight film was released. But unfortunately, it didn't quite pan out. Despite being named after Batman, the episodes don't really focus on Batman. 2 of them do, but the rest focus on anything from Bruce to the police complaining about Batman. It's a very odd collection that doesn't even try to tell a loose story between all 6 chapters, making the whole experience feel very fragmented and bizarre.
You guys must be studying the abridged book of ninja fighting.
Mutant Turtles, Chojin Densetsuhen. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were one of the most popular franchises in the 90s, complete with books, games, movies, and the cartoon. But their success wasn't limited to the West. Japan released their own rendition of TMNT titled Mutant Turtles. This was a toy release in Japan that got 2 limited OVAs to help promote the upcoming toys. Because what sells toys better than making an animated segment for them? The Japanese version of the Turtles look drastically different than their American counterparts, with robotic features or overly buff and lean torsos instead of the classic turtle imagery.
Logan. Hey, Hideki. Did you miss me, bub?
Wolverine. Wolverine as a character was always a success on screen, whether that be by Hugh Jackman's performance or any of his animated renditions. Well, except maybe this one. There's an anime in Japan simply titled Wolverine that was just too weird and poorly received that you may be glad you never heard about. As film and comic book fans know, Wolverine in Japan makes sense, but this version changes Logan quite a bit. He sports a mullet, is slim, and is very naive. We understand there's artistic takes on certain properties, but this version made a Wolverine nothing like the Wolverine fans love. The weak plot and disappointing action didn't help much either.
He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father.
Star Wars Cross Manga. Star Wars has seen all kinds of adaptations over the years, from LEGO animated features to Darth Vader Valentine's Day merch. But one of the more unusual versions of Star Wars out there is a manga series that covered the original films and The Phantom Menace. Apart from the obvious Japanese art style, Cross Manga set itself apart from its source material by being a lot more violent. When Vader dices off Luke's hand in Empire, a bloody trail can be seen on the pages. Since there was no blood at all in this scene in the films, it's pretty bizarre that the Japanese anime companies felt the need to up the violence on a wound that gets cauterized instantly.
You have to admit, Mojo, they don't really look all that scary.
I know, they are just annoying.
Powerpuff Girls Z. If you grew up in the 90s, or have a particular fascination with 90s culture, you'll be quite familiar with the Powerpuff Girls. Pro-girl power in all the right ways with cute little designs, the original series was a fan favorite, but the Japanese adaptation chucks all that was special about the series and ruins it. In the Japanese version, the girls are no longer sisters and they don't have powers unless they use a magical jewel. The overly long transformation also causes them to change clothes. It also abandons much of the humor and side characters and makes the Powerpuff Girls uninteresting characters. Marvel Disc Wars, The Avengers. Anime and Marvel together is nothing new. There has been a ton of adaptations in Japan of the popular comic book franchise. Some have been pretty straightforward. Some, like the previously mentioned Wolverine, were downright awful, and some were just plain weird. Disc Wars falls under the weird category, as they essentially turn the Avengers into Pokemon. It follows a group of kids who find a piece of Tony Stark tech called Disc, which can capture villains and then summon them into battle. After a prank by Loki, the Avengers get trapped in the discs, with the kids using them to combat a slew of Marvel villains.
I've got 3 religions bent on riot. If you're going to perform one of your miracles, the time is now.
Agatha Christie's great detectives Poirot and Marple. If you thought we were going to end the Victorian-inspired adaptations at Sherlock Hound, you were wrong. There's a Japanese anime series based off of Agatha Christie's Marple and Poirot, the latter of which was last seen in Murder on the Orient Express. The anime put 2 of Christie's characters in the same universe and on the same cases. The weirdest thing about this mashup is that it's actually a pretty faithful adaptation to all the books and short stories. But when one thinks Agatha Christie, an anime version isn't something that normally comes to mind. Only in Japan.
Wait for me! Come back! Don't leave me behind!
Halo Legends, Odd One Out. Halo Legends was a collaboration between many Japanese artists to make a series of standalone short films. One of those films was called Odd One Out, which was actually done by Dragon Ball director Daisuke Nishio. This is basically just Dragon Ball reskinned with a Halo design. Everything from the comedy, the art design, and familiar moments will be familiar to anyone who watched Goku's early sagas. The plot follows a Spartan on an alien planet who gets eaten by a dinosaur, getting involved in a fight that causes environmental damage, and eventually gets captured and flown away by a pterodactyl. What a weird short. But it definitely stands out in the Halo mythos.
You've destroyed a perfectly good giant robot castle! You're going to have to answer for that!
Batman Ninja. One of the more recent animated films in the DC universe, Batman Ninja sees the Dark Knight, Joker, and other characters in the Batman universe get sucked into feudal Japan. Batman has to take on the Joker without any of his trusty gadgets, instead relying on his early combat training to take on the feudal crime lords who might end up changing history. When directors take an established character and setting and mix it up, it can be dangerous with the risk of alienating fans. But Batman Ninja ended up being a bona fide hit with both fans and critics, and will likely rank as one of the best, albeit unusual, animated films in the DC lineup.
Don't tell me I finally got the Well,
that's it for now, everyone. What do you think is the weirdest Japanese adaptation of a Western property? Was there one we missed that you're aware of? Or do you love these wacky versions that they come up with? Let us know in the comments. And be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in your playlist every day. Thanks for watching.